So let's talk about Canada. How many people are really proud to be Canadians? Woo! Yeah, and we should be proud. We should be proud. How many people are proud of our reputation as being a very peaceful country? And the fact that we embrace multiculturalism. We don't demonize the other, we embrace the other. We should be proud. Yeah. So, every year, the Institute of Peace and Economics, they've been doing this for 10 years, using economic data, economic matrix, they measure the peacefulness of countries around the world. And this is data, entirely data-based. And every year they publish a global peace index. So where do you think Canada is?
One.
Oh, yeah. People know. So we're number 6 on the global peace index. And so I was thrilled that we were in the top 10, but I was a little disappointed that we weren't in the top 5, given that their summary report talks about the top 5 and the bottom 5. But then I thought, let's add population. And when we add population, we can see that these are very small countries. And Portugal is the largest of the top 5, and it's 2/3 the size of Ontario. So these are very small countries. We have 37 million people spread across a vast geography, and I think that makes us a real testament to the possibility of living peacefully on the planet today. I think that we kind of represent that to people around the world. I wanted to talk to you about the taxi driver in Amman. 4 of us, all Canadians, got in this cab, and I was in the front seat with the taxi driver. And when he found out that he had 4 Canadians in his cab, he was over the moon. He was so excited, he could hardly, I thought we were going to have an accident. Like he was shaking with his hands on the wheel. Because his dream was to take his wife and his 3 kids and move to Canada. That was his dream. And he'd gotten the papers, he hadn't taken it to the next step. But the fact that he had 4 Canadians sitting in his cab, that was a sign from God that it was going to happen. He wasn't going to drive anymore that night. He was going home to tell his wife that he'd had 4 Canadians sitting in his cab. Can you believe it? That's the way people feel about Canada. This is my friend in Mozambique. He's in Maputo, Mozambique, in the south of Mozambique. Did you know there was a civil war going on in the north of Mozambique? No, we don't know that. There was a civil war. It's still going on, off and on, off and on. He's displaced by the war. He comes to Maputo. He's trying to eke out a living. He finds out we're Canadian. And he looks at us with a look just like that. And he says, if I lived in Canada, I could have a life. If I lived in Canada, I could have a life. So that's the way we're seeing around the world. And I think that puts us in a really unique position to wage peace. If we think out of the box. If we think out of the box. So I'm not talking about sitting in our Muskoka chairs and feeling very peaceful. I'm talking about kind of stepping out. You know, if I went to the water, I'm just going to use a metaphor here. If I went to the water and I said to the fish, "Fish, tell me about water," the fish would say, "Water, sorry, I can't tell you anything about it." Because that's all it knows. It's all it knows. And those of us who are on shore, looking at the water, can sometimes have a better perspective than the fish in the water. So what I'm asking us to do, to think about, is kind of stepping on shore and not swimming. We're swimming in sort of water where we think war doesn't touch us. It's happening in other countries, and what can we do about it anyway? We're telling ourselves thoughts like that. So let's not do that. Let's kind of step back and think out of the box and kind of get a perspective on what's going on and see what we can be doing to wage peace. So I thought I'd start with a few questions that I could suggest that we ask. We have an election coming up. We could be asking our politicians and our leaders this. Why is our defense budget 28 times the size of the budget for the Ministry of the Environment? There's the graph taken from the Public Accounts of Canada. Is the greater threat to Canada, which is the greater threat? Is it the potential possible invasion of another country for which we have to galvanize and have a strong defense department? Or is it climate change and the impact of the environment on us all? Where is the greater threat? Where should our priority be? Did you know this? Did anyone know this? No, I was really surprised to learn this. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, we all know this. Why do we allow Canadian companies to manufacture armaments to sell abroad? We know that we sold tanks to Saudi Arabia. We sold arms to Sudan, to the civil war in Sudan. Why? Why are we doing that? If our value is peace and that's what we want to stand for, we should be exporting peace, not armaments. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Did you know that we host CANSEC, Canada's Global Defence and Security Trade Show, which is North America's largest trade show for suppliers to the military. So every year in Ottawa, 55 international delegations come from countries around the world to Ottawa to buy armaments and other supplies for the military. I mean, I think we should be hosting the world's largest peace show. This is incredible. And coincidentally, the next international conference that We'll Be On War is putting on is going to be in Ottawa at the same time as CANSEC, and I'd like all of you guys to come. So why are we doing that? Question number 4. Why didn't we sign the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons? We know why we didn't sign it. Pressure from the US. Only one NATO country actually signed it. But we also, I can remember when this was in the press a couple of years ago, but we kind of, we didn't get ourselves worked up about it. Do you guys remember this? Who remembers this? Oh, no. Okay. So Canada's on the wrong side of the anti-nuke movement. We actually refused to even participate in the discussions about this. And what the headline that stood out for me was the integrity of the Canadian position that it really wants to do away with nuclear weapons, but not just yet, is in tatters. And my final question, and this is my favorite, out of the box, get out of the water, stand on the shore, take a look. Favorite question. I put it out there, plant a seed. Why don't we have a Ministry of Peace? Why? I mean, if peace is a prime value, and peace is what we want to be exporting around the world, and communicating and sharing and living by, why don't we have a Ministry of Peace? And I'm not talking about creating an even bigger government with yet another ministry. I'm talking about taking a look at the priorities with the Defense Department and the Ministry of the Environment and a potential new Peace Department and a realignment. So let's think about that. Why not? What do you guys think? Yeah? Here it is. So those are questions that we can be asking our politicians and leaders. And what about ourselves? So I come back and try to ask some of the original debate and some of the learnings that followed had me asking these questions. Is war really inevitable? I mean, people say it's inevitable, it's part of human nature, there's always been war. Is it really inevitable? Is it really justifiable? Is it really necessary? Is it really beneficial? Is it really a last resort? It's being sold to us as a last resort? Really? So I don't think that war is inevitable at all. I think when we put a bunch of people together with different agendas, there's going to be conflict. But that doesn't make war inevitable. Using war as a way of resolving conflict is a choice. And we don't have to be making that choice. We have so much available to us now in terms of an understanding of conflict resolution and nonviolent movements and nonviolent communication. We have the example of Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Mandela after his 36-year retreat. So no, I don't think there's anything inevitable about war. It's a choice. So if we shrug and say it's inevitable, I think we're making a mistake. Is war really justifiable? So it's not that we're not saying that there isn't evil in the world. There is evil in the world, and we do have to stand up to it. But why would we stand up to it with an even greater evil? And war is the greatest evil of all. So why would war be the choice of the way to stand up? There are many other ways in which we could be standing up. Is war really necessary? All the research today is showing that nonviolent defense is twice as effective as violent defense, and that the movements that were fueled in nonviolent ways last twice as long and are twice as effective as movements that were created through violence. A lot of research is coming out about this now. So no, war is not necessary. Non-violent ways of defending ourselves and dealing with conflict are superior. Follow the money. Is war really beneficial? Have we really helped all those countries that we've gone into? Is Afghanistan better off? Is Libya well off? Is Syria better off? No. The only people who are benefiting from war are arms manufacturers and war profiteers. That's it. And is war a last resort? The human mind is infinitely, infinitely creative. And there are thousands of alternatives that we can come up with. And I want to hear about the 999 alternatives that were explored before the decision was made that war had to be the only way to resolve this. So no, we know it's not a last resort, and we know that there's a lot of other ways that we could be looking at it. So, another question that we can, this is my war is a choice, war is a choice, war is a choice. Think of it, war is a choice. Another question we can be asking ourselves, and I know, because I have friends in this room, I know that there are a lot of people who are having thoughts like this. Does what we think or do even matter? Does it even matter? I mean, here we are in the peaceful shores of Georgian Bay, in one of the most peaceful countries in the world. Does what we do or think, does it make a difference? Can we make a difference? And I want to answer that question with an example and then I want to answer it with some research that has been done. So I want to introduce you to Jeremy Gilly. Now here's a young man, long hair, jeans, living in his mother's basement. Usually he has a camera on his shoulder because he wants to be a documentary filmmaker. And he lives in Australia. And he has the idea that there should be one day of the year where the entire world commits to peace. There should be one day committed to peace. And he has a handful of friends. He has no money. He's living in his mother's basement. But he has a handful of friends who agree with him. And so they found, in 1999, an organization called Peace One Day. And why did they choose September 21st? That was his father's birthday. So they chose September 1st, they founded Peace One Day, and then they set out to talk it up, to talk to people, and spread the word, and get the word out. And the snowball started to grow, and the snowball started to grow. And then the Dalai Lama heard about it. And the Dalai Lama said that he said that he wanted to speak to Jeremy. Well, Jeremy couldn't go to the Dalai Lama. I mean, he had no money. How on earth was he going to get there? But then an airline said, okay, we'll give you the ticket so that you can go and talk to him. So he got the airline ticket. He went and talked to the Dalai Lama. The media got interested, obviously. It's the Dalai Lama. The media got interested and started writing it up, and it went around the world. And just 2 years later, this is what's so phenomenal, just 2 years later, the United Nations unanimously adopted September 21st as the annual day of peace on the planet. Just 2 years later. How many people knew that it started with a guy living in his mother's basement in Australia? It's incredible. It's incredible. And that's what I mean about our bureaucrats, our politicians, our leaders. They're swimming in a certain sea that they had to swim in to get to where they are. But we can step out, and we can have some perspective, and we can be pushing for change, the kind of changes that we think should happen. I think that many, many times our elected governments are sort of bastions of the status quo, in a way. And for it to shift, the ideas have to be coming from us. So I wanted to introduce you to Jeremy, and now I want to tell you some facts about what does we think. Does what we think or do even matter? And I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Erica Chenoweth, PhD, Harvard University, and she's done a lot of research on nonviolent movements and the success of nonviolent movements versus insurrections. And a corollary of her research, an interesting finding that she had, was this: what percentage of the population do you think has to change its thinking to shift the entire population? Any ideas? 50. Okay, I'm getting answers all over the place. It's really surprisingly small, 3.5%. if just 3.5% of the population shift in their beliefs and what they're asking for, the entire population can shift. And we kind of know this. I mean, there's a lot of books that are coming out now about thought leaders and so on, but we know this just from our own experience. I can go back, I know some of you have heard me say this before, to the women's movement in the 70s. So when I was a 12-year-old, my mother, I have a note that my mother kept in which I said, I hoped I could grow up and be your secretary. Not that there's anything wrong with being a secretary, but that's all I knew that I could grow up and be. And by the time I was in my 20s, I was in a consciousness raising group and thinking, screw that, excuse my language. And what ended up happening is, because some women were speaking out very strongly about this, more women got engaged. And then the entire population shifted, and we know that the world today is completely different for my daughter than it was for my mother. And that happened in our generation, completely different. So that's what I'm talking about, that if just 3.5% of the population have a shift in their thinking and their perspective and their understanding, the population can shift. So does what we think or do even matter? I think it does. I think it's extremely important. And I think if we want to ask ourselves that question and not conclude that it does matter, it's a guarantee that we won't take action. It does matter. So, what can we be doing to help create a more peaceful world? Here we are, again, in the most peaceful country, one of the most peaceful countries. And we're a young group, so we're really focused at Pivot to Peace on education and outreach and learning. So we can become better informed, we can get informed. And we are putting on an information night Tuesday, October 15th, for anyone who might be interested, in which we'll talk more about what's going on the planet. And we also have an information sheet that we can send out to people with all kinds of useful links to the video that I talked about whether war can be justified, and links to talks and speeches and so on that you can follow through on to get better informed. And if you're interested in either of those things, you can just put your email on the sign-up sheet on the table on the left side in the back of the room, and we will send this out to you. So get informed. You could even go crazy and join Pivot to Peace, why not? And I can't emphasize too much that all levels of participation are welcome. We actually have a member who said, who shall remain nameless, but he said, Helen, I totally believe in what you're doing. I'm giving you my name. I'm giving you my name, but I don't want an email, and I don't want to come to a meeting. But you've got my name because I really support what you're doing. And then on the other hand, we have people like the organizing committee for tonight's event who are just throwing themselves into this heart, body, and soul. So, and everything in between. We meet only once a month. You will only get one email a month unless you choose to get further involved with a different group. So it's, yeah, go for broke and join us. And just a brief summary of what we're doing right now. Again, because we're a young group, we're focusing on education and outreach. This evening is an example of that. And, educating people about the $2 trillion a year and that it could be spent on life-affirming projects rather than war. We have a speaker series coming up, and we have a number of people that we hope are coming to talk with us. And the Peace Pledge, and I'll talk more about the Peace Pledge in a moment, but we're hoping that 700 residents of South Georgian Bay will sign the Peace Pledge, and I know some of you have already done it, and it's up there on our Peace Wall. And why 700 residents of South Georgian Bay?
3.5%.
You got it, Pontiac. Who said that? Oh. Because 700 is approximately 3.5% of the population of Collingwood, so to sign our Peace Pledge. And in the longer term, we want to get educated enough so that we can go and make a difference at the conference in Ottawa next year at the same time as the world's largest trade show for suppliers to the military. Pardon? Yeah, we have one member, he's here tonight. He said, I'm ready to go now. So join Pivot to Peace, sign the Peace Pledge. Help us reach the 3.5% of South Georgian Bay goal for signing the Peace Pledge. And the Peace Pledge is really very simple. I know many of you have already signed it, but wars and militarism make us less safe. I mean, they say that for every drone that drops a bomb, 1,000 new enemies are made. It's making us less safe. So, and they kill and they injure people, and they severely damage the natural environment, erode civil liberties, drain our economies, $2 trillion a year. And the final sentence is, I commit to engage and support nonviolent efforts to end all war and preparations for war and create a just and sustainable peace. And again, that's an internal commitment. That's not, you're not going to be asked to demonstrate something you've done in the outside world. We're talking about this internal commitment. I stand for peace. I stand for peace. So, sign the peace pledge. And when you do sign the peace pledge, it would be awesome if you take it up to our peace wall. Oh, I wanted to tell you, when you sign the peace pledge, you add your voice to increase the impact and influence of the global effort to end all wars. You join with 75,000 individuals and 500 organizations in 175 countries who have already signed. You support Nobel Peace Prize laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and I have a video of him imploring us to sign the peace pledge. And we'll show that at the information night in a few weeks. And you know that you are making a difference. And I also think I should add, because I'm sure some of you are thinking this, your information will not be shared, and you do not have to receive any subsequent emails unless you actually opt in. You'll see on the peace pledge you can actually opt in. Now, the peace pledges are sort of this light blue paper, and there's some of them that are on the tables, and if you don't have any left on your table, they are back on the information desk in the corner in the back of the room. So, sign the peace pledge, post it on the peace wall, or anything else you want to say about peace, a note, a drawing, what peace means to you. We've got post-it notes that you can write on, or you can actually draw right on our peace wall over there on the left. And this is going to be a visual memory for us of this evening tonight. We're going to take a picture of it. We're going to have it for next year because we're in this for the long term. So please, post something about what peace means to you, or your signed peace pledge on the wall.
Q&A.
Q&A? Oh. Okay, so before I close, Annie, very subtly, would like me to find out if any of you have any questions. Do we have any questions? Yes.
How many of these groups exist in Canada today?
There's a very strong, you mean chapters for War Beyond War? There's a very strong chapter in Vancouver, very, very strong. And there's a chapter in Toronto that's getting going. They have very young people running it, and they're very busy. And there's one in Hamilton, and there's a couple in the east. I don't think there's a chapter in Ottawa right now. Any other questions? Okay, so why? Why are we? Why? And the answer is very simple. We're doing it for the children. I mean, do we think we're going to end war in 2 years? No. It's going to take a bit longer. It might take a generation. I don't know. But we're doing it for the children, for the babies that are all on the planet today. And I'd like us to just listen to their voice. If we can.
Light a candle.